What's up, everyone? Welcome to our final This Week in Crypto of the first half of 2024. It's going to be a show where we look a lot into the sentiment of the crowd right now. There's certainly some narratives forming, particularly around the Solana ETFs, as well as the US politics, as the title showed. We're really seeing an increased amount of interest in Trump versus Biden. It wouldn't be the first time that U.S. politics have come into the forefront in terms of how prices can be impacted. And I think as we get closer and closer to the November election, we're just under 5 months away now, we will only see these conversations get more and more noticeable. So what you should be keeping an eye on after we saw a pretty significant dip in Bitcoin is whether the trading crowd gets bearish, which right now appears to be more so related to whether Biden looks closer and closer to being president, or more and more bullish if Trump becomes potentially the president. And that is because Trump has been more vocal about being pro-crypto. Obviously, regardless of your political views, or if you have any interest at all in American politics, if you're not from there, the narrative from Trump is that he's very pro-crypto and is going to allow all sorts of flexibilities. Biden has been a bit more quiet about it. Obviously, it's his current presidential years, so it would be almost odd for him to say he is going to change a lot from what the status quo is now. So either way, let's keep in touch with what is going on there, and we'll dive into some of the metrics. For starters, as we see Bitcoin, one of the bigger losers among the top 100. This is somewhat rare. It's mostly due to just yesterday seeing some profit redistribution from a mild upswing from Bitcoin. So it's more so the timing than anything else that makes it look like many other projects are up while Bitcoin is down. But Bitcoin back at 61.6K or so after teasing going below 60K for just a brief moment. Solana, which we'll get into, Van Eck announced its filing of an ETF for its first Solana ETF, and that has, unsurprisingly caused quite a bit of excitement related to Solana, up to 10.5%, but it may not be done with its rally. We'll look into some of the analytics for Sol in particular to see whether it can continue to climb. But as you guys may remember from the Bitcoin and Ethereum ETFs, a lot is based on the optimism of whether those ETFs really do come to fruition. So far we're 2 for 2. I guess technically there's been some XRP ETF talk and that hasn't happened yet, but Bitcoin and Ethereum, we heard rumors about it for a couple months prior and then they eventually happened. So assuming this same pattern continues to come to fruition, Solana could be in a good spot. We'll just have to watch the news very carefully as the decision time becomes more and more prominent and fast approaching. Caspa, one of the big winners, up 25%. Polkadot, another big winner at 12.5%. You have a few coins that have just recently entered the top 100, like Brett. Bonk is still churning along. Now a top 100 asset, plus 15.4% over the past week. Toncoin continues its legendary 2024 so far. Congratulations if you got in early on that coin. But overall, you can see the screener market cap down 6.7% despite many of these big green bars. And that is, of course, due to Bitcoin making up such a large chunk of it and some other big assets like Uniswap dropping itself, wrapped Bitcoin down. SWI had a big drop at negative 7.2%. So it's still going sideways despite a lot of separation between different altcoins right now. I want to check out the development activity leaderboard. We may put out a post about it later today or this weekend, so stay tuned for that. But right now, you can see Hedera way up there at 806 notable development activities per day, by far number one right now. In fact, I don't think I've ever seen a number over a 30-day stretch above 800, let alone 700. For a while, if you remember following our stuff last year, it was all about Cardano, Polkadot, and Kusama, which shares Polkadot's GitHub repository. But there's been a change in the status quo lately with Hedera and Chainlink, Optimism, and Internet Computer all now well above Cardano, which is now sitting here at number 5. Now, remember, it's not just like a big horse race. It's really just about paying attention to projects that are constantly innovating and improving, and not necessarily comparing and saying, well, Hedera is now a better project than Chainlink. That's not how you should look at this. It's more so, are those numbers continuing to climb individually for that project over time? Is there a dedicated team that is trying to improve and make the project better to keep up with the expectations of the crypto landscape at any given time? And if you're looking at any of these 10 or even beyond, you see Ethereum, some other ones like Stellar down at 20. Any of these on this list getting hundreds of development activity per day, pretty good sign that you're in a project that has a team that is trying to make it better. And that has a lot of correlation, as you can see from the market cap ranks here. Whoops, I should not have hit that. But most of these market cap ranks are in the top 100, even the top 50, and that's not a coincidence. Cream tends to rise to the top over time. Okay, looking at a few of the trending words here, I wanted to highlight, just as the title says, the top 3, even the top 4 or 5 are all related to Biden, Trump, or the Solana ETF. You can see Biden here at number 1. It's been getting, I'm pretty sure there was just some news that came out, trending in the given text due to discussions related to the upcoming election debates between Biden and Trump. There are mentions of crypto policies, regulation, and potential impact on the industry depending on the election outcome. So people are quite polarized between the two and do think different outcomes can occur based on who is elected. And like I said, we're a little under 5 months away. Yeah, so it's related mostly to the upcoming debate between the two, with discussions about their policies. Mentions of Trump's stance on the SEC and Biden's views on crypto, indicating a connection between the elections and the crypto market. So yeah, keep a very close eye as that debate comes out. We could very well have crypto be mentioned in the debate. You never know. And if it is, you could instantly see Bitcoin's price, as well as the rest of the crypto market by association, suddenly fluctuating as much, if not even more, than a Jerome Powell speech, and it could cause a lot of chaos. So I'm not surprised to see them up there, and you may continue to see them trending near the top of the list for the foreseeable future. Meanwhile, the Solana ETF is definitely on people's minds. They filed their first, VanEck in particular, filed their first Solana exchange-traded fund in the US. This filing with the SEC contributed to an almost 8% increase. Now it's even more than this in Solana's value. Analysts predict that if an Ether ETF is approved, Solana could be next due to its commodity-like characteristics. And of course, that already happened. That happened back in mid-May. So that domino has fallen, and now it's really on Solana, and many people expect it to be next in line. The XRP community and a few others are begging to differ, but right now Solana seems to be the front runner. And yeah, we won't go over each of these, but yeah, I wanted to highlight those top 5. And now let's look at the crypto narratives for a minute. Wanted to show you. It's actually not here right now. I just recorded a video that goes over the some of the new features on the crypto narratives page, as well as the ecosystem. I highly recommend, if you go to insights.sentiment.net, check out the video, and it gives a good recap on what to do and the extra tools that are now available on the crypto narratives tab. But I do have this, which does show the midterm trends of popular subjects. We have the ZK Sync airdrop, which appears to be getting its most traction in about a week. You can tell by the widening of this area here. Another one that's really widening is the ETF flows subject. You can see it's starting to gain some traction. I might look into, let's do a quick check on that actually. Give me one moment while I pull up the ETF dashboard. All right, so as most of you may know, we have a dashboard that specifically looks at different volumes over time for 7 of the largest ETFs out there for Bitcoin. And if I hit refresh on these really quick, it's going to pull up the latest data in terms of volume. It's actually changed a little bit. It looks like Ante put some of these in a different order. And we should also have inflow and outflow. Yeah, we do. So just refreshing these. And let's check from the top here. So yeah, we definitely have GBTC. This was the OG that was around even before the mainstream ETFs became available. Less and less volume over time as others gain more and more volume. The IBIT BlackRock ETF definitely getting less and less. Most of these, in fact, are getting less and less. Fidelity looking a little bit better itself. ARKB has actually been rising, so this is one you should keep an eye on. A little over $289 million in volume in the latest day. BTCO, Invesco is pretty neutral at the moment. Bitwise definitely declining. HODL got a bit of a jump as of the past week. And then here's the total ETF volume. Here's the one I wanted to really hone in on. Yeah, so you can still see mostly a decline, but it's flattened out over the past 2 months or so. You can see it's averaging anywhere between maybe 1.3, maybe $900 million, all the way up to, we'll call this the high at about 2.9 million or so per day. After, during the all-time high run in early March, we had it way up at $11.1 million in a given day. So yeah, it's fallen off a bit, but don't look at volume as necessarily a bullish versus bearish indicator. Low volume doesn't mean that Bitcoin's price is going to jump or drop off. It simply means that we're having less interest from outside investors that don't want to hold real crypto at any given time. And oftentimes that's because prices have gotten boring. They tend to have more volume when there's volatility, and big whales out there decide, okay, now's the time for me to buy a big chunk or sell a big chunk. And as we know, since March, it's really been mostly a decline followed by a period of flatness. And I think that this is reflective of that in the volume. Let me check the overall flow if we have it. No, that part isn't updated just yet. That's okay. We'll come back to that. I might do a video on this sheet in the near future. To get to it, just go to queries.sandspin.net/dashboard/ETF-volumes-728. You can just pause it here if you're watching on the replay or live and type it in if you have trouble. Okay, looking at a few of our insights from the previous week or so. I was off for the first part of this week, so I only had a couple of days to do some updates, but I did want to point this out. This is one of the new features on the Crypto Narratives tab, and you can actually just customize any combination of words or singular words and compare them on this beautiful area chart now. And I did this with bullish related words such as buy, buying, bottomed, and bearish related words such as sell, sold, topped. And I even threw in hodl or hodling, holding, things like that. And you can see that there's been a significant drop in bullish calls over time. Yes, bearish calls are going down too, but not at the same frequency. And hodling is still hodling overall. But the story here is that less and less people are calling for, new all-time highs and crazy bull run expectations. And in turn, as you know, that means that we have a greater than likely chance of a rebound, while people are very fearful or pessimistic about the markets. We said the level of bullish calls across X, Reddit, Telegram, 4chan, and Bitcoin Talk has dropped significantly as traders have lost confidence in markets. Bearish calls have slipped, but much less rapidly. We interpret this as crowd fear and indifference, a potential bottom signal. We talked about the top trending words. There was a whale tracking video I put out last week. I highly recommend you check that out. And then finally, I wanted to highlight this. So maybe 24 hours ago when this post went out, Solana and Avalanche were having a big run themselves. And it was Solana that seemed to be getting most of the attention. These bars here correlating with the color, so Solana in teal, and then the darker teal bar is representing its social volume. You can see a big spike in Solana social volume, whereas Avalanche also was seeing a big jump, up 9.3% in that 8-hour stretch. Where's the social volume? It just didn't really exist. So in the short term, you may want to look more into the asset that is not getting a lot of crowd recognition rather than the one that is, because this indicates FOMO, this big bar up here, whereas this is basically just indifference because people are more distracted by Solana or perhaps Bitcoin's dip or what's going on with Ethereum. So the ones that go under the radar are typically the ones that climb the most. Just something to keep in mind. I also want to recommend checking out the Sandbase updates insight that our teammate Irina put out. It's a really good recap of some of the new happenings on sentiments and what you can expect as far as improvements on the Sandbase platform that you know and love. All right, another one I wanted to check out is the trending coins. So unsurprisingly, Solana is leading the way. You can see 63% of comments right now are positive according to our tracking algorithm. Negative is normal. 22% is about right for an asset that's trending. Usually there's always going to be 20 to 25%, even when the price is pumping. So Solana has always been a bit polarizing, kind of like XRP, and you're going to see a bit of backlash anytime it's trending, especially when it's trending related to prices pumping. Fetch, Pixel, Ka, Mog, a lot of very small assets. Bitcoin here down at number 9, but Fetch is interesting. It's an AI-related asset. If we look up the summary of it, so it's related to the ongoing merger. We've been hearing about this for quite some time, where Fetch, Ocean Protocol, and SingularityNet are all merging together. So it's likely related to the interest in the renaming of Fetch to Artificial Superintelligence Alliance, ASI. So you should be able to see some impact on Coinbase and Crypto.com. Perhaps those are listed, the ASI token are listed across major exchanges in the near future as well. Pixel trending in the text because it's related to a crypto asset called Pixel Coin. Users are discussing connecting their Pixel account to different networks, earning Pixel points, linking the Pixel dashboard to Telegram bots, anticipating the launch of Pixelverse. There's also mention of having a certain amount of Pixel tokens and participating in a Pixel airdrop. So you see these frequently, these smaller assets that you may or may not have ever heard of or paid attention to that tend to get a lot of traction due to an airdrop or something related to an airdrop. Ka is mostly related to price pumping, apparently. Mog very much so as well. Here in red, you can see the price really jumping up. Ocean's price, as we saw related to Fetch, really dropping off. Michi, another one that's pumping. Bohm has been pumping. And then here's Bitcoin. It's mostly related to potential market crash fears from Mt. Gox payouts. struggles to move past certain price levels, discussions and presidential debates. So this is a very bearish description overall, and that should give you a little confidence if you are a proud contrarian, which we recommend you should be, whichever way the crowd is leaning, which is right now related to a lot of fear. That's where you can capitalize by feeling the opposite, really. And there are quite a few different bearish explanations out there. Concerns about the mining of shitcoins potentially making the bottom of the market in 2024, unpredictability of Bitcoin, so on and so forth. Decrease in Bitcoin's hash rate is interesting as well. So lots of discussions about Bitcoin negatively. Generally, just people getting bored for the past 3.5 months since that March 14th all-time high. Prices have mostly gone slightly down or just sideways for multiple weeks at a time now. So that's something you can keep in mind. And here's AGIX rounding out the top 10 related to that ASI 3-coin merger out there. All right, so that's some of the social trends. Now let's move on to some of the meat and potatoes here with Bitcoin's overall value as well as what's going on chain right now. I had let's put that there. And let's put this here. And we're going to just start off with the whales. All right, so what should be a vote of confidence for you is the fact that Bitcoin whales and sharks aren't really going anywhere right now. You can see they were here in the bright green line, by the way, which is any wallet that holds 10 or more Bitcoin. That, of course, includes many shark wallets. You know, we wouldn't include a 10 BTC wallet that holds, what is that, about $600,000. Yeah, that's not a whale. That's more of a mid to low range shark when it comes to Bitcoin. But regardless, when we combine all of these, we see some pretty good correlation with Bitcoin's price. And it has still been climbing a bit flat in the last 5 days or so. But regardless, it's not going down. And there are certainly periods where this line goes down. If we go back, let's say 4 years. So you can see, you know, especially in early 2022, a couple months after the then all-time high that happened in late 2021, look how much these wallets dropped off in BTC holdings. So since that time, since early 2023, it's been mostly just a big climb, and prices have reflected that. So, you know, if I go to the very far right of my screen and I draw a line from the current all-time high and compare it to the amount of BTC held by 10 plus BTC wallets, yeah, it's looking pretty good still, because this is what we call a bullish divergence, where BTC continues to be accumulated by these key stakeholders and price is going down regardless. So they're just scooping up more and more overall as the decline happens, and the crowd, as we just saw, gets very disinterested. Meanwhile, look at Tether continuing to drop. So this is a little concerning, in my opinion, over the past year, especially since June of 2023, the 100K to 10 million Tether wallets have dropped almost 10% of the supply. And USDC is down maybe about 4% as well. So stablecoin wise, the dry powder isn't quite there. You know, the necessary buying power of the crowd to get more and more assets, it's a little limited right now. It's not falling off a cliff, but it's certainly going down. And you can see back in even as early as the beginning of 2021 or so, the Tether was really just being swapped for Bitcoin. So right now, yeah, it's pretty clear that the red line is going down. So Tether is being swapped for more Bitcoin overall. But I would still be cautious. More recently, you know, if we go to the last 3 months, there's a little bit of flattening going on. And if Tether continues to decline while Bitcoin is not going up anymore, from these shark and whale wallets, then you have something to be a little bit concerned about. Very, very mild warning sign right now though, not a big concern. Supply and exchanges has crept up a little bit over the past few days. Nothing I would be too concerned about, but something to keep an eye on. Meanwhile, USD coin is moving up pretty significantly. So this is reflective of Coinbase in particular, and a lot of potential buys going on right here. And Tether is mostly just flat over the past couple of months. Let's check out the funding rate really quick for Bitcoin. Okay, so one at a time, if we look at DYDX, a little bit of longing there. Let's make this full screen. A little bit of longing, but really nothing too crazy. Deribit was seeing a lot of longs over the past week or so, but it's at least calmed down now. So you look at this pink line in particular, if I just get rid of all the others really quick. So yeah, this pink line is representing the long versus short ratio on Deribit, and you can see how much greed people had and optimism that Bitcoin would bounce, but it didn't really. And eventually the amount of longs kind of died down here. So that's a good sign, especially we start to go into negative range and there's more shorting than there is longing. That's a great sign that we start to see some prices climb once again. All right, let's that one. DYDX, as I mentioned, a little bit of optimism still. We want that to go away. BitMEX is neutral. You can see, interestingly, on BitMEX, they actually shorted at the bottom here, which is typical. You'll see people try to ride the wave down when they think Bitcoin's going to continue crashing and then be shocked when their short gets liquidated and you get this temporary bounce. And as soon as the shorts went away and it went neutral here again, notice how the price started to go down again. So BitMEX is right up there with Bitcoin as some of the biggest perpetual contract funding rate volume and has a major impact. And then speaking of Binance, it's completely neutral at the moment. A little bit of signs that they were trying to short here, but it didn't really ever get into the negative range. All right, so that's a good recap on funding rate. Moving on down. Total amount of holders. I wanted to point out how, let's go to the last year. Bitcoin's amount of non-empty wallets. So any wallet that has at least 0.0001, minimal amounts of Satoshi, they're all counted here. Right now, there are 54.23 million Bitcoin holders, essentially. And it's been going down a little bit. This is a sign of impatience and frustration that you should actually be happy about. What we don't want to see is crazy, crazy ascension like we were seeing at the end of 2023. Yes, prices eventually did go up, but they didn't go up until the amount of holders started going down here. That was a good sign that people were getting impatient again and took profit from the October to December rally. So when it's going up, that's a sign that people are getting greedy again. When it's going down, there's a little bit of fear, and that the latter situation is when you tend to see the biggest rises. Percent of supply and profit back down at 84% from after this drop happened. That's a good sign. There's no arbitrary number you should look for, but generally the lower it gets, the more likely Bitcoin can rise without much resistance. And speaking of that, I think we can transition now into some of its on-chain metrics, such as transaction volume and trading volume. Now, we did see a little bit of a spike here at the beginning of June, but since that time, it's more or less stayed pretty neutral, if not declined a little bit. Trading volume had its moments, but nothing really too exciting compared to the March madness that was going on right before the all-time high. So yeah, not much on the transaction volume side. As far as daily active addresses go, We're seeing a little bit of a rise lately after the big drop off that happened at the end of May, but it's still far, far away from what we were seeing earlier this year. If we look at this trend line, yeah, you can see how it's been pretty flat here with only about 650,000 BTC addresses per day interacting on the network. So this does need to improve at some point in order to justify a sustained rally. Circulation isn't looking as bad, but it's mostly just flat. This dark red line indicates a 30-day moving average of unique tokens moving on the network. All right, MVRV, a very important metric to keep in mind right now. So 30-day MVRV, average trading returns are at about negative 6.4%. That is a good sign. You can see many instances over the past year where it goes to below negative 5%, which I'll mark right here, right there. Anything below that, you do tend to see that things have rebounded mildly, but just keep in mind that there are historical points where the MVRV might go as low as negative 15 to negative 20% for Bitcoin before finally jumping once again. So this means overall that we are in a less risky point than average for Bitcoin's price if you were to invest or add on to your position right now. Meanwhile, long-term traders are only up at about plus 12.7% now. A good sign that we're starting to get close to zero again. The closer we get to it, or even below it, would be a fantastic sign. And certainly we're no longer in this plus 70% range like we saw in the first week of March. That was a big danger signal. So getting closer to neutral on the long term, and we're finally starting to see that this is painting a neutral picture rather than a long-term bearish one because of the immense profits that people have had for the past year or so. All right, we looked at funding rates, whale transactions, mostly staying flat. Yeah, it's very flat throughout June, in fact. So whales are kind of just biding their time and watching to see for some volatility and major madness. Some might argue that this drop here was some major volatility. So it is a bit disappointing that whales did not interact more with this big drop that we saw in the past week. All right, we looked at the tier distribution, so I won't recap that. Ratio of on-chain transaction volume and profit to loss. If we look at the individual days over the past week, so this is flat. Anything below it means there's more loss taking than profit taking. What you don't want to see is a lot of these where there's big spikes in profit taking. Obviously, the biggest one was right before the all-time high, but most days throughout June, really, we're in, at least the second half of June, we're in a more loss than profit territory. And that's a good sign that people are capitulating and jumping out, getting basically rid of their Bitcoin in fear of prices dropping any lower and them losing any more in their portfolios. Mean dollar invested age, it's staying low. This is interesting. It isn't quite seeing a big climb like we were seeing during the more bearish times. It's kind of chopping. Every time it's starting to rise, there's another big chunk of key stakeholders that move the mean dollar invested age line down. And generally, you want this line going down. That's a justifier that we're in a bull market. So the fact that we're kind of flat right now is not bad. With these mild token age consumed spikes continuing to jump out on every, I don't know, at least a couple times a week right now. This is an indication that a lot of tokens from older wallets are moving back into mainstream circulation. And social volume dominance. As far as overall dominance for Bitcoin, it's not really being talked about at any crazy rate. We did see that it was number 9 on the trending tokens countdown. But look for extremes as a direction indicator. And right now, Bitcoin is not seeing anything too nuts. I would argue that On the 23rd, there was a little bit of a spike. This was as prices were really dropping and panicking, but it wasn't as big of a social dominance spike as you might expect. So people were kind of talking about other tokens and their losses in tandem with Bitcoin. And I still think it's very important to keep in mind that the negativity toward Bitcoin is very prevalent still. There's a lot of people that are bearish toward the asset overall, and that should come as a good sign for you overall. Okay, and then RSI is negative right now, which is a good sign. Anything below 50 means there's a little bit of a bullish signal going on. So we've been in that negative zone for about 3 weeks now. And the further down we go, the more likely we'll at least see some sort of relief bounce in the near future. So some short-term signs that we are in a bullish territory right now and can continue to bounce up, perhaps toward the 62 to 65K range. But long-term, that 365-day MVRV still needs to come down maybe a bit more. Whales are a little on the flat side right now. We'd like to see them resume their accumulation. But yeah, just keep in mind that we could go either way right now, and a lot is really being dictated by the U.S. election and how much people are paying attention to altcoins right now, which some had a very good week despite Bitcoin's drop, which is pretty rare. Okay, so that's a recap on the markets. I won't go into any other on-chain metrics for now. I did want to point out that most of the markets are appearing as underbought right now on the midterm time frame. So even with the mild altcoin rally this past week, most are sitting way in green here. And that is a sign that we are in an opportunity zone, which we have been for much of the last couple of months. So if you have the gall to be a contrarian and a buyer of the dip, the numbers say that it's not a bad idea right now. So keep that in mind as well. This model has been pretty reliable overall on a long-term basis. Don't expect that it plays out in the next day or even the next week. It's more of a month-to-month thing. All right, Baresh, give me, if there are any questions or asset requests, shoot them my way and we'll have time for a few. Okay. Sure. Nakamoto Games. So this is the 385th market cap ranked asset out there. Let's put on our main template, which is public, and take a look at how the volume and transaction volume are looking. So Nakamoto Games are declining pretty significantly since the all-time high in March. It is down about 64% in market cap. That's what a lot of assets have done, especially if they're outside the top 100. There have been pretty significant declines. I don't know why it just jumped to queries. That's interesting. Trading volume has been increasing, though, which is interesting. So perhaps the person who requested this asset knows something about the coin. Yeah, trading volume has been pretty significant over the past month and a half or so. I'm curious as to why. So feel free to drop in the comments why that is. It hasn't been enormous, but it's rising even though the price is declining. So that could be something there. Daily active addresses are declining. Nothing too exciting here. This is pretty reflective of the price drops over time. Let's see if we have regular MVRV since the intraday isn't showing up. We don't. So we have we have some metrics, but not MVRV and some of the traditional ERC20 metrics. Whales, you can see how little they are really moving NAKA right now. It's been kind of just a less and less whale activity over time pattern going on. Supply distribution. So if we look at, let's say, the price is pretty much right above $1. So sharks and whales are going to start here at 100K plus. Hasn't been very much change. There are 7 addresses that hold $1 million or more, and 3 that hold 100K to $1 million, and they have barely moved. Let's split this into 100K and above in terms of percentage of supply held. Let's make it not a dark color. Gold would be better. Interesting. And then we'll go mid-range, which would be something like, we'll say 100 to 100,000. And then we'll just go anything below 100. Got it, Balresh. We'll do covalent next. So 0 to 100, yeah, there's actually been a decline as prices have dropped. Let me overlay price on here too. So this was around the point where the small holders kind of gave up, and even the mid holders too. So anything below 100K, they were starting to give up their percentage of supply right around here 5 weeks ago. Meanwhile, there's been accumulation of Nakamoto since right around the bottom on May 22nd. And yes, even though prices had this big drop here in June, as a lot of assets did, we're seeing them add on to their percentage held of the supply since that time. And that's a good sign. You can see how the gold line here, we'll just hide these again. So the gold line did have quite a bit of correlation with the price between the beginning of 2024 up until it finally suddenly dropped off within a day or so after they had this big dump. So on March 25th, huge drop. This was after a lot of coins hit their all-time high a couple of weeks ago. So this wasn't just every asset declining. This was Nakamoto in particular declining right after the whales dumped on March 25th. So that would have been great alpha. And then when they started to accumulate here, it looks like they're starting to ramp up again and expect prices to rise. So Nakamoto, from this perspective, does look like a pretty good bet for a relief rally at some point in the near future, assuming Bitcoin can stabilize and get its footing once again. It is not being talked about much at all. The social volume and dominance is remaining very low. So it is under the radar from that perspective. Not a lot of mainstream attention, as you wouldn't expect it to after a 64% decline in the past 3 months. And negativity mostly due to just the lack of overall discussion as well. RSI, yeah, just a little under 50, so that's a good sign. And total amount of holders has mostly just been flat, maybe just very, very subtly has crept up, which is a little surprising. I actually would expect that maybe the total amount of holders is declining for Nakamoto now because it's been such a boring, disappointing asset since March in terms of price in relation to others. All right, covalent will be our last, and then we're going to finish the stream here. So covalent is the 314th ranked asset, somewhat similar to the same position as Nakamoto. Its trading volume is not on the rise the way that Nakamoto was. It's actually been declining quite a bit in the last 2.5 weeks or so. Transaction volume very low. Daily active addresses mostly declining. A little bit of a jump in the last couple of days. Circulation very low outside of a few occasional huge spikes. This is pretty common when you're looking at assets outside the top 100. A couple solo moves from whales can have a big impact on the amount of unique tokens being moved. Whale transactions, just like Nakamoto, just less and less over time. Look at this, though. Back in late April, this was a prime sign that we'd see a relief bounce, and that's exactly what happened. Price is a little under, so we're looking at about 15 cents. So sharks and whales are going to be $1 million or more now instead of 100K or more. There has been actually a pretty big rise in 1 million to 100 million, represented by the red and yellow lines here. So the red, between June 7th and the 20th, there was actually a rise of 11 more sharks here, and the gold ones, there were 20 more whale or 8 more whales during that time as well. So that's actually a pretty good sign. Yeah, I like the look of that. Let's look at the percent of supply held. So we will go 1 million covalent or more, and we'll get rid of the other one. If we just look at it from this perspective, address is holding 1 million or more covalent. They were at their very bottom back in late April, and then they started to accumulate again. We saw this relief bounce here. And even after this dump started, they're no longer seeming to dump. They're actually still increasing, as we can see here, even though the price is doing this. That's a bullish divergence. It's not quite as extreme as Nakamoto, but I like the sign of accumulation here, even though prices have really dropped off. If we look at that same time, March 11th until now, almost identical to Nakamoto, down about 64%. And during this time, the 1 million or more line was declining pretty aggressively. So that made sense. But I like that it, even going back to late April, just about 2 months ago now, if we go to its very bottom and I hold down shift, yeah, they've accumulated about 0.5% of the supply again, which is significant because they already hold about 93.3%. This does look like it's a pretty centralized token compared to most. So keep that in mind as well. Mean dollar invested age. Yeah, I mean, it does look like it's starting to get dormant once again. You can see this was the big drop off in holdings from some whales right there, and that had an immediate impact on price. But yeah, we'd like to see this stay low, kind of like we were seeing here when Covalent was actually able to continue seeing some mild bounces despite the volatility in May and June. Supply and exchanges is interesting. It's mostly starting to flatten out. It was really lots of Covalent moving back to exchanges. I'm wondering why. It's almost the amount of supply and exchanges more than doubled between the beginning of 2024 and the beginning of June. So that probably wasn't a good sign. There was a lot of selling off of those coins, but at least now it's kind of flattened out and chilled. Not a lot of movement in either direction. Social volume and dominance, there's actually been quite a bit of intrigue related to Covalent. I'm not sure why. Trying to think. Do a quick check here. Go to social trends, and we'll go to search for social topics, CQT or Covalent. Some of the trending words: raised, rebrand, rebranded. So there's been either there already was a rebranding of this asset or they're in the process, and that seems to be getting a lot of social volume right now. So keep that in mind. If you ever see a token out there that's getting a lot of increased interest, as you can tell that Covalent has over the last 2.5 weeks, look at the social context here, as it shows a set of words that have been frequently used alongside the coin's name on crypto social media in the recent days. So I think this has to be the reason Covalent is starting to get a little more attention, and oftentimes a rebrand can have at least a temporary positive impact on price. So that may have something to do with why the requester wanted to take a look. And its social dominance got to its highest point at the beginning of this week since mid-February, which was related to a big price jump that it saw back then. Very interesting stuff. Positive sentiment actually here, which probably was also related to its rebranding. RSI just a little below 50, just like Nakamoto, which is a good sign. And then total amount of holders is just continuing to climb up. So maybe regardless of the rebranding, this doesn't seem to be having much of an impact on traders wanting to liquidate their wallets or anything. All right, so that's Covalent. I appreciate the request for Nakamoto and Covalent today, guys. Always nice to look at some new tokens that I don't normally analyze. If you want to follow up with any further questions, just drop them in our Discord. And we are more than happy to chat with you about the markets further and see how this next week as we transition into July goes. Overall, like I said, short term, there's some bullish signs, but a little bearish still because of the large returns that so many people saw over the past year. So keep that in mind. I wish you all a wonderful rest of your week. We will talk to you on the stream next week, if not sooner. I may be pushing out another video soon. And we will see you on our Discord, on our YouTube comments, our X comments. Any questions you have, we're here to help. Take care, guys. Be safe.